This 20-liter Nano Cube is, or better say was, my oldest running Aquascape. I've set this up in July 2019 and today will be its last day. It's one of my favorite scapes I've ever done and a lot of you really like it as well. But unfortunately it's becoming very hard to maintain this layout, so I have to take it apart. The last time I did a big maintenance session on this aquarium, I already noticed that a lot of the moss wasn't really attached to the hardscape anymore. And the piece of driftwood underneath the moss were not attached to the rocks anymore, so the whole thing is very shaky. Now in a few weeks my nephew's birthday is coming up and I've been thinking of giving him a Nano Aquascape as a birthday present. So the plan is to rescape this cube into something that's easier to maintain and doesn't need CO2 injection. My nephew's birthday is in 3 weeks, so we have some time to let it grow in as well. Okay, so I already went ahead and took everything out. I mean, the whole scape was just falling apart, the moss was barely holding on, so today we're going to try it and rescape it. I'll basically use the same materials, the same hardscape, the same plants, maybe I'll add some new plants, but I'm just going to turn this into a very easy to maintain low-tech aquascape for my nephew. I mean, he's only 10 years old, but every time he comes over here he's very fascinated by the aquascape, so I think this will be a nice gift for him. I've been talking to his parents and they're kind of in between of getting him his own aquascape. I mean, his mother kind of enjoys it, but his father not so much. They used to have a large discus tank in the past, but they had some issues with it, so they have some bad experiences, and that's kind of why they're not really very enthusiastic of getting their own aquarium again. So I think this is just a small step, and we'll see if they enjoy it or not. And if they're not enjoying it, they can always bring it back to me, and I'll figure out something else to do with it. So here we have pretty much everything that was in that little tank. I mean, if it wasn't for the moss, you probably wouldn't have known that all this was in there. But we had a bunch of lava rocks in there. They were covered with all the Physidens moss. Same for the 2 pieces of wood. So these were basically forming the main hardscape structure. So we're going to reuse all this again. We had a bunch of crypts that we're going to reuse. We had some epiphytes, some Bucephalandra and some Anubias. We're going to use all that again. And then I have some new plants. So we have some dwarf hairgrass and I have some Helantium Telenum as well. So I'm going to use all this and yeah, just see if we can turn it into a nice, simple, low-tech aquascape. So I've already tried to clean up the aquarium a little bit, so it's almost ready to go. I've actually saved the substrate. I mean, this is 2-year-old Aquasoil, but it's still full of nutrients, full of beneficial bacteria, so it's good to reuse that again. Same for the filter. I'm probably going to take that out in a minute and place it in this aquarium for the time being, just to keep those beneficial bacteria alive. Then we're going to have a very smooth start once we rescape it. The cube itself is from Dennerle. This is the 20-liter cube, so it's measuring 20 centimeters by 20 centimeters by 25. Now some of you might remember that there was actually still 2 fish in here, the 2 amber tetras. And not too long ago we bought a large group of amber tetras for the big shallow. So I decided to catch them and add them to this aquarium. But there's actually a big difference between them. So these ones over here, those are the ones that I bought like a few weeks ago. And this one over here, see, that is the one amber tetra that came from the Nano Cube. And this one as well. You can definitely notice a difference in color. That's crazy. These guys are almost red. So I'm not sure why that is. If it's just because of the food, or if it's the age, or if it's just a different quality amber tetra. But it's interesting. So the filter will stay in a big shallow for the time being, just to keep those beneficial bacteria alive. Now we can get started. First thing I want to do is add a new black background to this aquarium. The previous one was all scratched and ugly, so let's give it a fresh one. Alright, that's looking much better already. Looks a little bit funny right now, but once all that moisture behind the foil starts to dry up, it will look completely black. I actually made a mistake with the measurements earlier. It's actually 25 by 25 by 30, so it's a little bit bigger. I almost didn't cut enough from the background foil, but we made it. So now we can move on to the hardscape. So like I said earlier, I want to reuse the same hardscape again, and I also want to use the moss again. Now there is still some moss on this hardscape, so we can perfectly fine just place this back into ground like this and it will start growing again. But I want the moss to be much more dense than it is right now, so we need to add more moss. Now I could just glue it onto the hardscape again, but that's what I did before, and yeah, it just doesn't last very long. So I'm actually going to tie the moss to the hardscape with some cotton thread. Alright, that's the lava rocks and the 2 pieces of wood completely wrapped in moss. I think that looks really good. So now we can start working on the hardscape layout. Yeah, I think that's it. I think that looks really good. Just need to make sure that the filter still fits in the back left corner, and then I think we can continue with the planting. Today is my nephew's birthday and the Nano Cube has developed nicely. The moss on the hardscape is looking really good and I'm surprised by how well the hairgrass has grown in such a short time. I've added a few new Caridina shrimp and they really help to keep the moss nice and clean. For the past 3 weeks the aquarium did get CO2 injection, but I'm going to remove that now. To make sure we don't get any algae issues, I'm going to change to a less powerful light and add more floating plants to reduce the light some more. It's now time to drain the tank and take it with us. I'm going to remove as much water as possible, but I'll leave a small layer for the shrimp. Whenever I have to move an aquascape from one place to the other, I always cover the plants with some wet paper towels, secure the hardscape with some cardboard or bubble wrap, and then cover the whole thing with cling film. Luckily they live close by, so I don't expect any issues. My nephew has no idea what's coming, so we're going to set up the aquarium in his room and then call him in and see his reaction.